minds of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, March 2nd, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Sean McElwee from Data for Progress will be here. Talk about South Carolina. Talk about Super Tuesday. Talk about Pete Buttigieg dropping out. Talking about Joe Biden's surge of momentum. Machismo coursing through his veins. Also on the program, I repeat, Joe Biden wins South Carolina big. Buttigieg drops out. Strengthens the anti-Sanders quadrant of the race. U.S. signs a peace deal with the Taliban, and then apparently it falls apart. Still looking for more details on that. Novel COVID-19. Maybe I don't think I use novel with that. Shows up in New York City and takes a second life in Washington State.
Yikes.
Calls for Warren to drop out and Klobuchar to stay in increase. HHS whistleblower suffers retaliation. Bill Barr is taking over antitrust regarding Silicon Valley, and as much as I like antitrust applied to Silicon Valley, I antitrust Bill Barr. Judge finds Ken Cuccinelli not legally appointed as head of the immigration whatever it is that he's pretending he's doing at Department of Homeland Security. First Circuit Bush appointees rule that Don McGahn may defy a congressional subpoena. Wisconsin court rejects that 200,000 voter purge. Next stop, Wisconsin Supreme Court, which is, of course, a bastion of conservatism. Turkey declares war against Syria. And a Republican mega donor is in the process of attempting to take over Twitter. All that and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We were going to, we had another guest scheduled. We were going to talk about the Supreme Court and where it's headed, but that guest got ill. And was unable to show up. But we had fortunately double booked because we've obviously in the midst of the primary. So we'll have Sean McElwee on. Tomorrow on the program, we'll talk to Dave Weigel. Sean is more of a numbers person. Dave Weigel is more of a I'm on the ground getting a sense of what's happening in these various states person. He will be in Washington tomorrow, though. We will talk to him. Obviously, we'll give you updates on COVID-19. We're calling it COVID-19. I mean, that's the technical name for it, the strain of the virus. But it's also apparently, whenever we mention the name, which we're not going to mention, of the thing, YouTube demonetizes us for the whole show.
The Adam Carolla virus.
Yeah, we'll call it the Adam Carolla virus.
Did they give you a reason for that?
Well, advertisers don't want to be associated with it.
As a brand?
Yeah, advertisers don't necessarily want to be associated with those stories, but they don't realize that we do a 2.5 hour, show, and the
COVID-19 sounds much scarier to me.
Well, I mean, look, the bottom line is, from what I've read, there is supposedly to the extent that we can tell right now, it looks like it's about a 2% mortality rate. However, we really don't know the full numbers. Now, that is, I think, about 3 times what it is for the regular flu. And there is some sense that it may be more contagious than a typical flu. However, there are also a lot of people who suspect that that number is probably closer to like 0.7, which is probably closer to around to what the flu is. My understanding, too, from what I've read, is that it tends to be immunocompromised people and elderly people who are at the most risk in terms of mortality. That children are not in a particular risk. Obviously, everybody is in, it's risky for everybody. But so, just as a way of at least calming people's concerns about their kids going to schools and whatnot. But I will also say, from what I've read, when you wash your hands, sing happy birthday twice, the idea is that the soap doesn't just rinse off the virus. It actually, the nature of the virus, from what I've read, there's a couple of different types of viruses like this, but it has a fatty outer, almost like encapsulation. I don't know what they call it. I don't have the words in front of me, but it has a fatty protecting around the virus. And soap, what it does is it basically exposes it and then kills it. So, but you need to scrub for a bit. And also alcohol-based washing also does it. My understanding is that it lives on like metal only for about 5 or 6 hours, but it can stay on plastics for a while. So wipe things down if you can, wash your hands, don't cough on people. They say that masks really don't really help that much. It sort of makes you fiddle around on your face more than anything else. If you have it, it might be good. But also nitrile gloves, I guess, are also good. Those rubber gloves, you look silly. But I mean, I think we're probably, honestly, I would be surprised if within 2 or 3 weeks, people are coming into work saying like, saw some people on the subway with gloves. And in New York, at the very least, people are starting to, there's been cases announced, people are starting to load up on dry goods. Because it's also conceivable, I think, I mean, people shouldn't panic about this, but I think it's conceivable that we've already had some school cancellations in Washington where there seems to be an outbreak that obviously was unknown that it was spreading. It takes a 14-day incubation period. That's apparently one of the biggest problems with it. And, the kids, I think what we're going to experience in this country in some places is the equivalent of like one of those really bad smog days in California where they say it's recommended you don't go outside because the air quality is so bad. We may get that for like, it's recommended over the next 2 weeks. If you can work from home, work from home. If and maybe the schools, I mean, this is conceivable.
We'll get more of those cool DIY streams from you.
That we will be doing all of this remotely. We're actually going to go. That's one of the meetings we're actually going to have this afternoon. In the event that something like that happens, just so we can plan it out. But it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But you can get dried goods like pasta and stuff like that, so you don't have to go out to the supermarket. Now that's happening already in New York, and people are freaking out a little bit in some areas. And apparently some of the supermarkets are like, crowded as heck. And everybody, of course, now is coughing every time anybody coughs. Everybody looks at it. So that's that. We will keep you updated on that. In the meantime, we're at the sort of one of the key junctures of the 2020 primary election. And this weekend, last week I saw on Twitter that there was a Bernie Palooza in Worcester, and I as you know, I'm supportive of Bernie Sanders' candidacy, and I also I remain, still a fan of Elizabeth Warren. I'm not a voter in Massachusetts anymore, but I did grow up in Worcester, and so I rang my old friend John Benjamin, who was also from Worcester, to see if he wanted to go up there, cruise up to Wormtown, and do a little canvassing, just because hang out in the old stomping grounds, and so John Benjamin and I went out and canvassed Sunday morning. It was an interesting experience. You have these theories about what people vote upon, and of course, it really depends. This was a neighborhood in northish, eastish Worcester, near Green Hill Park, if you are familiar with the area. Now, as a kid, I would go to Green Hill Park. They had a spaceship slide there. And it's a big, just like open field. I don't know what they're doing with it now, but we basically were up around in that area, walking around. Maybe it's not quite North Worcester. Maybe it's like Central East Worcester. I don't know. And it was freezing. And I couldn't, my phone was running out of batteries. So, hold off on the whole boomer thing with the live streaming, because I got news for you. The boomers don't know how to live stream. Gen X, we get right through, get right under the line. So here it is, John Benjamin and I out on the mean streets of Worcester. Oh, here we go.
We're live.
All right, folks. So we're still at it.
Yeah.
On the streets of Worcester. Oh. And no.
Oh, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. People are so friendly here.
Yeah.
And rides.
Slow start. We weren't, a lot of people not home.
Yeah.
But we've had a pretty good streak. It's been...
last 4 or 5 houses.
We've hit, I would say, 60-40, right? Bernie to Biden? Maybe 65.
60-40. 60 Bernie. 40.
By,
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And, but that's about it. Just those two folks, so that's good. We don't want to brag, but
we're good at this.
We're pretty good at this. But we also we turned 2 people.
Yeah.
One person recognized me from MSNBC.
Yeah. One person recognized me from Bob's Burgers.
And that person was considerably more excited than the person who recognized me.
Yeah,
she's
MSNBC.
like, what is Bob's Burgers guy doing here? And that basically turned it for them.
No one gets really excited about MSNBC.
No. So we've got a little more canvassing to do. And I don't want my phone to run out because we got the Bernie app on there. And that's the way that we're...
You okay?
No.
You can be all right?
I'm not sure.
Hey, shut the phone off. You're not feeling well.
All right, folks, we'll see you later. So there it is. And that was our experience was, a lot of people weren't home at that time of day, but everybody was, people were like, look, I just want somebody who's going to beat Trump. That's the main thing. Like I'm going to main Trump, beat Trump. That was the big thing.
Same in New Hampshire.
Yeah. I mean, it was overwhelming. And what I took from, there were 2 people who were like, I'm not sure. I may not vote, but I'm going to definitely vote against Trump in the fall. One of them said, and they weren't sure about Biden or Bernie. Literally the only names that came up. Nobody said any other names. Nobody said Warren. Now, this is a working class area of Worcester. It was very diverse. Decent sized Latino population. I mean, this small, we're taking a small sample size. So, we knocked on about 60 doors, 70 doors maybe. And there were immigrants from West Africa. There were African Americans, white folk, decent LGBT representation. Really, actually, an interesting neighborhood. And of course, sadly, you're in Worcester. There's nothing else. There's just, but I'm not going to crap on Worcester. But the overwhelming sentiment was, I just want somebody who's going to beat Trump. And the interesting thing was, this was right after, obviously, South Carolina. James Clyburn, 50% of people who voted for who voted for Biden did so on Clyburn's recommendation. And, I have speculated in the past, I have this theory that I think a decent amount of people are staying home just saying, like, I can't decide. I'm going to vote for whoever wins. I don't even care. I just want to vote against Trump. And the way in which, look, this woman was a huge fan of Bob's, and like she's sitting there talking to us, and you introduce yourself, but she's not like listening for the names. We have to confirm that she is the person. Are you Betty Johnson? That wasn't her real name. I'm Sam Cedar. This is John Benjamin. And we're talking, and she keeps like looking at him. And at one point she goes, "Are you on Bob's Burgers? Are you Bob?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh my God," and almost like fell over. And, "Jenny, come out here. Oh my God, get the camera. Holy cow. I'm going to vote for Bernie. I'll vote for Bernie."
Bernie needs to get his data operation so that they can look up which people actually watch Bob Burgers, like they like it on Facebook, and just send Benjamin to those houses.
Well, honestly, because at first we were like, it'll be funny if somebody reckon it. But I think the nature of the Democratic voter right now is, I'm going to vote against Trump. Look, I'm painting with a broad brush. I definitely think there's people who have sort of ideological issues with Biden, ideological issues with Bernie, vice versa, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's probably more people who are actually excited to vote for Bernie, but whatever. I'm talking about another chunk of the electorate, ones who probably haven't decided yet. The ones who, and it really occurred to me there, like, I was like, wow, that really made a difference. Like, people want a cue as to who they should vote for. And that turned some people. I had the same experience where I was talking to them. They're like, have I seen you on TV? And now what I did, as opposed to Benjamin, because his voice is more recognizable, I did not wear my glasses that turned dark. I get 2 pairs of these. Now, these turn dark. I didn't want to show up at people's house with sunglasses. I think that's rude. John is rude.
What'd you tell him about how Bernie could beat Trump?
Well, there was a lot of things I said. First off, we were the only people canvassing. No other candidates did. And I said, look, one of the reasons why I think Bernie can beat Trump is exactly like the fact that we're the only people who've knocked on your doors. That it's going to take a tremendous amount of grassroots energy to get people out there. And, we're here. There should be Biden people, but there isn't. He needs this as much as Bernie does, but they're not here. And that should tell you something about what he's able to muster. Now, because from my perspective, if you can give someone like a piece of data that they've experienced, it's anecdata, right? But that's helpful. The other thing I think I said was that, there's a lot of people, and this is absolutely the case, that are concerned about Joe Biden's sort of stamina. And look, I have talked to people who've covered this. They've said that the guy has lost a step. I have talked to people who were former candidates in this race who said stuff like that off the record. If there should have been a lot more support for Joe Biden, as much as they don't want Bernie Sanders to win, there should have been a lot more institutional support for Joe Biden. I think that people were a little bit concerned. So, and I think that's a real factor.
Not all old men are created equal.
No, that's true.
Jews are tough, man.
What's that?
Jews last a long time.
Some of them. Some of them do.
New York Jews from the Great Depression.
Knock on wood.
Talk to my grandma.
Hey, folks, hiring's a challenge, but there's one place you can go where it makes it simple and fast and smart. How do I know? Because I've used it. I have used it. I don't know why they don't feature me in these commercials. That place is ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. When I needed to find a producer a couple of years ago, I needed someone who had a set of skills, but also like a specific background in a very narrow field. I put it out there. Got a lot of very good candidates. But one came through the door via ZipRecruiter, having done something so similar that they were aware of our YouTube titles. And that's because what ZipRecruiter does is they send your job out to like over 100 of the web's leading job sites. And then not only do they have matching technology and they scan a bunch of resumes that are out there on all sorts of different places, they hook you up with that person. And that's what happened with Brendan. You can add screening questions to your job listing so that you're not wading through a lot of people who just aren't right. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers, who post on ZipRecruiter, they get a quality candidate within the first day. That's what happened to us. I kept going, though, because you know me. I always say the best time to look for employees is when you do not need them right away, so that you can make a smart decision. Right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free and see how it works for you. My listeners can go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. MAJORITY. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter, it's the smartest way to hire. Let me ask you guys and ladies, what if there was a 50% off sale happening every time you went shopping for razors? It wouldn't feel like a sale, would it? In fact, how would you be able to tell? Well, shaving with Harry's is like that. They offer premium blade refills as low as $2 each. That's a 55% sale relative to the Gillette Fusion Pro Shield. And honestly, that's I would say a big part of the reason why I love Harry's is like I'm not embarrassed by the product's name.
Yeah, unless you're actually using Fusion Gillette.
Like, what does that mean? A Fusion Pro Shield? Just give me a good razor, one that is simple and high quality. That's what I like about Harry's. The handle is like simple, refined, classic. The blades are sharp. The pivot head is narrow enough that it fits in my asymmetrical nostrils. Harry's doesn't inflate their blade prices. They don't add unnecessary features like flex balls or back, I don't know what the hell. But Harry's, like I say, it's a return to the essentials. They source their steel from Sweden. They manufacture them in a factory in Germany. If you don't love your shave, you let them know. They give you a full refund, 100% quality guarantee, and 1% of the proceeds are set aside for nonprofit organizations to helping provide access to better health care for men and veterans. Harry's has an amazing offer for my listeners. New customers get $5 off a trial set at harrys.com/majority report. You get the 5-blade razor. You get the weighted handle. You get the foaming shave gel with aloe, and you get a travel cover. Join millions of guys who've already switched. Go to Harry's, HARRYS.com/majority report. That's Harrys.com/majority report to claim your offer. All right, quick break. When we come back, Sean McElwee from Data for Progress. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report on the phone. Pleasure to welcome back to the program. He is, what is your actual title over at Data for Progress?
Executive Director.
Executive Director of Data for Progress. Sean McElwee, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
What are you talking on? Are you talking on some type of like headset or something?
I was talking on my AirPods Pro, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got news for you. Those are not pro. Those things are not so great on the radio. But if you could switch off, that would be great. But if not, I understand. You gotta maintain the look. But
I can switch to wired AirPods.
Oh, that would be great. Wired AirPods are great. I don't know why people are a little nervous about putting their phone up to their. Yeah.
All right.
You there?
2 seconds.
There we go.
Yep. Do you want me to switch to the wired?
Switch to the wired. We'll do this while you're doing that. There you go. Folks, here's a pro tip. Those AirPods Pro, they make you feel like you're distant.
All right.
Oh, boy, does that sound so much better. All right, so Sean, South Carolina, last Data for Progress poll, Bernie Sanders was down by 9 or Biden was up by 9. It seems like South Carolina, there was one big factor. I sort of mentioned it earlier, but I'll let you mention it too, that really sort of changed the outcome. But what's your sense of what happened in South Carolina?
Yeah, absolutely. What happened in South Carolina is you had a strong surge of late deciding voters, disproportionately black voters, that moved to Biden. We had it moving to Biden by about 15 points from when our poll was released. And I think that was largely due to the endorsement from Representative James Clyburn.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. I mean, what does that say about what's going on out there in terms of the electorate to you, at least in the context of South Carolina? And we should say, right, like I'm looking at this, I've got a list of like the most representative, states, and, a southern state is not necessarily the most representative of like states across the country. And the Democratic Party as a whole, obviously the African Americans are a huge voting bloc in the Democratic Party. But what does it say that so many people were moved by Clyburn at that late in the race?
I think what you've got is you've got a lot of voters who are still undecided. And particularly the moderate voters are trying to figure out, who do I want to support? Do I want to support, in the Super Tuesday states, it might be between Bloomberg and Biden and Klobuchar. In South Carolina, you had Klobuchar and Buttigieg, who are also sort of cutting a moderate mold. And I think that those voters were sort of up in the air. And then with Clyburn's endorsement decisively moved to Biden. So going into Super Tuesday, I think there's a couple of implications. The first is the chances of a sort of runaway Sanders delegate lead seem less likely. I think you saw Steyer's share of the vote dropped a little bit below where he was polling, and you could certainly see that happening with Bloomberg as well, where a lot of voters who are sort of between Biden and Bloomberg moves to Biden, which means that he hits thresholds in an increasing number of states. I think you're also going to see Biden winning the southern states that are up in Super Tuesday, states like Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina. If it was in question before between Biden and Bloomberg, I think you're going to see those move definitively towards Biden. So the states that I'm going to be watching are first California, which is a massive delegate haul. How does Sanders' margin do there? If Sanders is where we were seeing him before, at somewhere around like 34, 35 points, that could be very, very powerful for him. Can he sort of hold on in Virginia? Joe Biden just released a bunch of endorsements there. It has a lot of the sort of suburban voters, sort of the more resistance types. Can he make inroads with those voters? And the last one is Texas. I think that, you know, in the end of the day, the difference between a narrow Biden win and a narrow Sanders win is very small in terms of delegates, but it's very big in terms of narrative. And you've seen Biden close out a little bit. There was an Emerson poll out today that had him Sanders +5, and he had a bit wider lead before. So we're going to see if there's a sort of same sort of late deciding thing. But I still think that Sanders is going into Super Tuesday in a good position to come out the delegate leader. And I think you're going to have a two-person race there between Sanders and Biden, with the moderates starting to coalesce. Already, Buttigieg just dropped out, and I imagine you're going to start seeing the progressives coalesce as well.
All right. Well, let's talk about that in a second, though. But let me ask you this question: had Clyburn said, and I'm only asking because I'm trying to get a sense from you, if you have a sense of this, of like how. I mean, that Clyburn had that much weight. Now, obviously, he's a huge figure in South Carolina politics, and I don't know that there's actually like a similarly situated politician really in any other state. I mean, off the top of my head, right? I mean, but had Clyburn said, and he wouldn't have done this, but Clyburn said Sanders, do you think the same amount of people would have moved? Like, I'm wondering, like, how much is it like they're, these folks were looking for, which centrist to vote for, or if it was just like, somebody give us a sign as to who is going to beat Trump, because we're just not, I mean, this is the sense I was just saying that when I was out canvassing that I got, where, to the extent that people were undecided, some were, some weren't, but to the extent that they were, like, literally they were just waiting for anybody to come and tell them, you know what, here's who you should vote for because they're going to beat Trump. And if it was even like a relatively decent argument, they're like, boom, sold.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty unlikely that there's a scenario where Sanders is able to secure Clyburn's endorsement.
Well, yes, I understand. But, I'm just talking hypothetically.
But yes,
right.
Yeah, assuming that, I definitely think so. I mean, we had Biden at 51% with black voters in our poll, and the exits show him ending up with about 70% or maybe even a little bit more than that. So I definitely think that there is some evidence of late deciders breaking very strongly to Biden. I think, like, if Sanders had a very high profile endorsement of a black leader, that certainly would have influenced his standing among black voters. In order to sort of give a sense of how strong the Clyburn endorsement is, Pete Buttigieg had an event with a couple of mayors that was planned, and the mayors backed out rather than sort of like cross Clyburn.
Wow.
And you had a lot of candidates who were able to get some elite black support, sort of activists and thought leaders. Elizabeth Warren had some endorsements along these lines. Buttigieg did. Bernie even had a good number of local elected officials. But no one was really able to really make inroads with black voters in South Carolina. And that does not necessarily mean they won't be able to make inroads with black voters elsewhere. Bernie did decently with black voters in Nevada and in some of the early states. And I think it's very possible that his sort of message would resonate with black voters in the Midwest. It's important not to treat black voters as a monolith.
Right. I mean, I was just going to say, like,
divide.
People lose
Younger
different races, and you're not going to get all the white voters either, for that matter, or the Latino voters. It does appear to me that Sanders has made some very substantial inroads in the Latino community, though, and I guess we'll see that will become clearer, I guess, in places like California and Texas, and we may even have a sense of it at least in North Carolina on some level, Virginia for that matter. So let's talk about Pete Buttigieg dropping out. Talk about who that benefits at the margins. Like the issue, it seems to me, is less the idea that like how many more people leave Buttigieg to go to Biden or to Warren or to Klobuchar than to Sanders or vice versa, but rather how much it helps someone like Biden and maybe Warren and maybe Bloomberg hit the threshold in specific states, thereby denying Sanders a sort of runaway victory in some of those states, right? Like I'm thinking like, I don't know, maybe, I mean, I have the polls here, but like in a place like in Massachusetts, for instance, where it's, seems to be Bernie and Warren running, more or less neck and neck, Biden may end up actually getting some delegates there, because if it picks up a couple of points from Buttigieg in Colorado, like Bloomberg and Warren seem to be right on the Texas seem to be right on the cusp of being viable in Colorado. Biden could pick up a couple of points, or it could shore up Warren in terms of like getting, give me a sense of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. So a distribution of Buttigieg's relatively small base of support equally among the candidates is best for Buttigieg, is best for Warren and Biden, who were at risk of missing thresholds in many key states. And it does prevent Bernie from having this runaway delegate lead. When we were looking at the early polls in Virginia and Colorado, I was sketching out a very dangerous scenario for the establishment in which, because of the sort of clustering around 15%, no single sort of anti-Bernie candidate was able to accumulate delegates across a broad range of states. And Buttigieg dropping out certainly benefits Biden in the sense that he is now more likely to be able to hit thresholds statewide and in some CDs across the country. And I think really puts this in the sort of position where it is going to be a close two-person race coming out of Super Tuesday.
Right. And to that end, I'm looking at like, and obviously I have no control over the Klobuchar or the Bloomberg or the Warren campaigns, but if let's say Warren dropped out before, would that create a similar dynamic? Or, I mean, obviously, like in Massachusetts, if she dropped out in Massachusetts, I don't know, maybe she still would get above 15% and get some delegates at this point. But how much do you think that the dispersal of her support would actually end up helping or hurting, let's say, Sanders? Because it's not clear to me that she's, if it's 50-50, right, with the dispersal of her things, like 50% go to Bernie and then 20% go to, I don't know, Bloomberg, and 30% go to Biden, that may be just as problematic as her, I mean, that 50% given to Sanders doesn't necessarily help Sanders, does it? Or let me make the same analysis in terms of Warren.
I think that that's true ahead of Super Tuesday, in that there's been a lot of early voting. I think let's see how things play out. But if you have a scenario in which Klobuchar and Bloomberg both drop out and you start to see a lot of establishment support going to Biden, if the progressive vote is split, we end up in the situation that the establishment could be in which Biden is able to accumulate delegates in every state and every congressional district, and progressives are missing
splitting
thresholds.
Right.
Occasionally. Right now, Bloomberg and Klobuchar are both taking up at least some share of the vote. But it's a situation in which Biden is the only candidate running in the more moderate lane, you have to expect that he's going to start picking up more endorsements. He picked up 4 congressional endorsements yesterday, and Senator Tammy Duckworth today. And then we would really run the risk of regularly having the progressive vote. One of the candidates, more likely Warren than Sanders, be missing those delegate thresholds, which would allow Biden to amass a strong lead.
Yeah, so we definitely want Klobuchar and Bloomberg to stay in as long as possible. That would be good at this juncture. But in terms of Warren, would there be a big benefit for Bernie prior to Super Tuesday if Warren dropped out?
As I was saying, prior to Super Tuesday, I think that there's the problem of Super Tuesday is already happening in a lot of ways. I think it's important to remember that lots of people are currently voting. And I think that it's very unlikely that the Warren campaign drops out before Super Tuesday. I think they want to sort of get one more roll of the dice, so to speak. But I think after Super Tuesday, there's certainly going to have to be an assessment. A lot of it's going to depend on what the results look like. But I think that the last thing I'll say, because I think it has been sort of undercovered, is I think that there is a lack of a desire among Democratic primary voters for a contested convention. So I think that it's going to be very hard for a candidate who does not have a viable path to a majority of pledged delegates, or at least a very definitive plurality, to make the case for staying in. Because I think voters we're already seeing voters are voting strategically, and I think they're voting strategically to get to a majority. So I think it's going to be very difficult for candidates without a viable path, both from elites and from voters, to stay in the race.
Interesting. Anything else are we leaving on the table? Is there something, I mean, to me, the big story is going to be, or I should say, one of the stories is going to be that polls are going to close at 11 p.m. on the East Coast. Obviously, in California, local time, it'll be 8 p.m. But 11 p.m. on the East Coast. So I feel like we're going to get like one of those sort of like Pete Buttigieg in Iowa situations where it's like Joe Biden is going to come out and say like, I've done it. I have closed the gap with Bernie because 350 delegates that are due Bernie are extant at, by Wednesday afternoon. In fact, we probably won't know the real delegate count until, I don't know, April 1st or something. Do you have a sense of gaming that out?
Yeah, I think this is something progressives need to be very worried about. I mean, one indicator I think we'll want to keep an eye out is how does Sanders perform in the sort of southern states? It's certainly possible, from my perspective, that he could make inroads and get better margins than he did in the past. And the margins really matter for delegate allocation. And so that's something to watch very closely. But you're absolutely right that there is a lot of media expectations to keep in mind. One example of this is Katie Porter won a congressional seat in California last cycle. Everyone knows that it takes California an incredibly long time to count the ballots. Everyone knows that late ballots are disproportionately Democratic, and yet you had media coverage declaring her dead on arrival, saying that this proved that progressives couldn't flip swing seats. The betting markets actually had something like 5 cents for Katie Porter victory shares. And she ended up winning, certainly not as narrow as a margin as that would imply, a decent margin. So I think that even with the sort of media expectations around California and Colorado, because Colorado is going to have going to take some time. They do have mail ballots. The media is going to know that Sanders will perform well here, but we're not going to know exactly how well he's going to perform. And so absolutely, I think progressives should be very aggressively on social media, on television, working to make sure that the media does not declare Super Tuesday over long before it is, because we're going to see Bernie really, really strong with some of the later votes, and that is where a very healthy number of the delegates from these races are going to come in from.
And that's a good thing for folks to get on social media and remind their friends of, and remind, as of now. But if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that sometime around 10:30 p.m. Eastern time is a great time to go and get a deal on Bernie winning X number of delegates on trade sports.
Yes.
Is that what I mean? Is that what I'm hearing? Like you're basically doing one of those those things where they would do the off-track betting and they would delay the results by about 35 seconds or something like that, so somebody could slide in and.
I'm saying if the markets have not become smarter and there's very little evidence that they have, betting on delegates in a Bernie surge late from California would be a very smart bet to make.
All right, and I just want to remind people I'm setting up a 529 program where you can actually take your kid's education fund, and we will do the legwork for you to invest that. Anything else? Anything else that we should know before I let you go, Sean? Is there a bellwether? Could there, with these sort of diverse states, is there anything that's even remotely close to a bellwether? Is there one state that we should be looking at that comes in, relatively early? Most of these things, I guess North Carolina comes in at 7:30 and Virginia at 7 p.m. I would imagine Virginia is a bit of a bellwether, right?
I'm going to be watching North Carolina, Virginia, and Texas. I want to see, is the Sanders strong Latino performance holding up in Texas? We don't want to sort of treat the Hispanic community as a sort of monolithic entity. I'm going to be watching Virginia to look at sort of how the resistance suburbs end up voting. And do they end up swinging hard for Biden in those suburbs? And then I'm going to look at North Carolina because that is the state that has a lot of diversity, and so we'll be able to sort of like get a really good sense of where the different coalitions are going to be heading into what increasingly looks like a head-to-head brawl between Sanders and Biden. It's going to be, I think, a very messy several months coming up.
I agree. All right, let me ask you this, because I know what your type does, and I and I know that you hold back on this stuff, but you're going to tell us so that we know this, and we won't share it with anybody else. What counties in Virginia, North Carolina, and Texas, or regions of the state, should we be looking at that? I know you're like right?
I'm not that type of guy. I'm not that type of elections nerd.
Keeps it back. He holds it back.
No, I promise you, I'm not that type.
I don't believe
nerd.
it.
It's definitely not what I do.
All right. Well, so much. All right, fair enough. I get it.
I can tell you what type of online non-profitability sample is the best to be purchasing for these primaries. But
the what?
That's not the type of nerd. What type of sample is the best to look at these races?
Oh, okay.
where do you get your sample from?
Oh, I see what you're saying. All right.
That's what I study.
You look at the polling, not the results.
I think about how to best get our polls to be accurate, and as they were, first three contests, we were the most accurate pollster in the country, and I think we're aiming to hold that mantle on Super Tuesday.
When do you come out with your Super Tuesday polls?
We were texting. We did our text to web. Texted more than 300,000 people yesterday. We had 3,000 respondents. Our team is currently analyzing that now, and we are planning to start dropping those as soon as possible. Probably tonight. I don't think we're gonna try to do anything tomorrow.
What about doing it right now? Oh, wait a second. Do you want to deliver those polls?
We don't have any polls. We were texting all day yesterday to get the post South Carolina.
All right.
See what changed. So it takes a long time to do polling.
All right, suit yourself, McElwee, if that's the way you want to do it. And you got all those folks in your back room working on those numbers.
Well,
I can hear
I'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll have them all out tonight, and we can talk tomorrow morning.
All right, great. Sean McElwee, Data for Progress. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Have a great one.
Bye-bye. There it is. Follow him on Twitter. He'll be happy. I think that's basically it, folks. I think at the after Super Tuesday, we're going to be in a very sort of different world, I imagine.
Yeah, don't slack on those Bernie texts and phone calls, guys.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Corey Robin had a tweet to this effect, and John Benjamin and I addressed some canvassers up in Worcester at one of those hipster parties, and I forgot to mention this to them. I mean, first of all, the canvassers, it's just amazing. The people were just so dedicated. I mean, regardless of who you support, it's really great to see people coming out and working for a candidate and caring enough about this stuff. But one of the things you can do too is, if you can't get out there, obviously, people phone bank and whatnot, but the most effective thing you can do is convince your parents or your cousins or your sisters or your brothers or maybe your kids. If someone's undecided right now, it's because I would imagine that 8 out of 10 of those people, 9 out of 10 of those people are because they're just not sure who can beat Trump. And I think the best argument is, honestly, is just like you got to go where there's the most energy, because the people who are supporting Joe Biden are the people who are heavily invested in getting rid of, are going to vote, are high propensity voters. And I haven't seen data to this effect. It's my theory. Then it's a theory. This is you're so much of these type of like political persuasion is based upon arguments that sound good, but not necessarily where there's a tremendous amount of data. But I would imagine that that what we're looking at is high propensity voters, and so the key is, who's the candidate who's going to get the low propensity voters? And here is the argument that I also whisper a little bit, because there are folks who are, in my mind, look, there have been times I have not voted Democratic for the Democratic. Well, in New York, we've got fusion voting. So I vote for usually the Democratic candidate on a non-Democratic line. And I suppose there may have been some occasions where I have not done that, but only where I don't think there's any jeopardy of letting the Republican win. I've always seen the Democratic Party as a vehicle People can argue as to whether it's an effective one or not, but I've always seen it as a vehicle. I don't have an allegiance to it like I do, let's say, like the Red Sox or the Patriots, and I consider my allegiance to the Red Sox and the Patriots also silly because I don't play on that team. It doesn't matter if they moved and the Twins for whatever reason came to Boston and it was the Boston Twins. It would take me about 6 to 12 months and I'd probably be a Twins fan. I mean,
you'd win a lot less too.
No, I'm presuming the same, whatever. But the point being is that like, we live in an era of negative partisanship. So much of the conservative and the Republican, frankly, and whatever you want to call that mishmash, particularly on that side. There's some now, I mean, it's increasing with Trump on the Democratic side, but particularly on the Republican side, it's always been like, you hear these memes online, like, we're going to poison the fish to own the libs, right? That's what negative partisanship is. They're coming out and it's just like they are going to vote against the Democrat. This never comes up in the Sanders circles for understandable reasons at this juncture. But I would bet in the general, I don't know if Bernie will do it in a full-throated way, but the narrative will get out there in different ways because the idea that people criticize, and I sit on panels with people who, have remarks like, stuff like Joe Biden's the only real Democrat, that type of thing. That's all well and good. In the general election, that's going to benefit Bernie. That's going to benefit Bernie. With a huge number of people, no. But remember, we're talking very narrow margins. And if you're making a case to your parents, kids, aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins about electability, I would say energy, and I would say there's this thing called negative partisanship. Republicans love to vote against Democrats. Everybody wants to make this a referendum on Donald Trump, and it will be for the vast majority of, well, not for the vast majority, but for the majority of people, it will be a referendum on Donald Trump. But in terms of peeling off some Republicans, not necessarily the ones, the Mike Bloomberg Republicans, they're going to follow their hearts and their tax cuts. But the ammunition is not going to be there in terms of just a vote against a, classic Democrat.
Yeah,
and
Bernie has liberal values, but he doesn't have the vibe of a liberal.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the vibe of a liberal is, but he doesn't have.
He's not a coastal elite.
Well, he may not be, but he's rural, and I think there's some coding there, coming from Vermont. To me, he sounds like somebody from Brooklyn, but I'm not sure that, frankly, if I didn't know, I would I would pick up on that. Like I've had people I've known from various Midwestern states say like, I had no idea you were Jewish, and I would just look at them like, are you serious? But putting that aside, the fact is he was an independent. And is, a registered independent. And I think he's probably registered for a Democrat now, or I'm not exactly sure how they work that out. Like I say, it's not that important, except for people who live and breathe to vote against a Democrat. And so those are the arguments you can deploy, the quick and down dirty ones, and get that vote out, folks. All right, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, AM Quickie. Great way to get a brief news brief every morning, 5 or 6 minutes long. And you get your news for the day, get caught up on stuff. You can skip a day of watching the news or listening to this show and make sure that you're updated. amquickie.com. You can either get it through the app at our app at Majority app, or you can just go right to amquickie.com and sign up for it. And it's all taken care of. Don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off. Also, check out our friend Nomi Key's show, the Nomi Key Show, patreon.com/the The McKee Show, NOMIKI Show, SHOW. And she's doing a huge live event tomorrow in California. Michael Brooks, I think, is out there already now for it.
I saw Michael before he went on his plane this morning, actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
Where did you see him?
He had to come get the merch for TMBS.
Oh, he did?
So at 8:30, yeah.
Oh, is he going selling merch out there?
Sell some merch, yeah.
So what does he do? He have a big bag full of merch?
Big old box.
Now, he can travel with literally $1,000 worth of merch by just bringing like 2 or 3 sweatshirts out there, right? Isn't that
They're not
right?
punk prices.
If he goes out, he sells like 3 sweatshirts. He's like, all of a sudden, he's got like a college fund for his unborn children. And, so check that out. And you can go to, I think, patreon.com/The McKee Show and buy tickets if you haven't already. Oh, here it is.
It's on Eventbrite. Oops.
It's on Eventbrite. It just went away. All-star panelists. Well, I mean,
Justin Jackson, the Chargers running back, is on there.
Very cool. I heard him on Chapo.
Nando Vila.
David Dayan, I think.
Dan's there too. Yeah, I think there's more people than are actually on this.
Oh yeah, Michael Brooks. So I mean, you can get a general admission for like 1/8 of a sweatshirt. So it's definitely you can't miss on that one. So check it out. Wait, let's see the address. It's there's no address. What?
There it is.
Oh, there it is.
It is.
It's on Hope Street, out near. I guess that's on the west side, right? Near University's USC. So the 10. What's that intersect with? 10 and the 110. Oh wait, no, that's downtown. Sorry.
Huh.
I don't know what that is. It's downtownish.
Does it say maybe?
Yeah, it's where the hipsters are. All right, so check that out. And I guess no TMBS.
TMBS will be Friday this week.
There you go. So you can check that out. And Jamie.
Oh, yes. This week on the Antifada, we delve into the realm of electoral politics. Some of our fans probably aren't happy about it, but I think more are. We have on Shuja Hader, really great writer, to talk about the Bernie movement and the Bernie phenomenon, what it means to the larger fight for socialism, Bernie and intersectionality, and all sorts of things, folks. That's coming out on Wednesday. Check it out, patreon.com/theantifada.
And coming up on Literary Hangover, I'm going to be doing an episode with my significant other on Toni Morrison's A Mercy. And we will be
what?
Yeah, and we're actually going to be doing a show. I don't want to give away too much, but there's going to be some video content. So yeah,
you're doing a live show?
There's going to be some sort. We actually filmed a pilot last night. We're not going to release it, but things went pretty well in this home studio. So
wait, what?
We got the OBS up and running.
Are you serious?
Yep. So look forward to that. So
wow.
And people will get the first look at all that stuff at patreon.com/literary hangover.
So wait a second. You're doing this with your girlfriend?
Yep. It's going to be not entirely politics focused. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. So.
Wow, like housewares or like what kind of stuff? Like what you guys do around the house?
Yeah, I mean different. We had a bit of a discussion in the episode that won't be released about how I'm the messy person in the
oh my
apartment.
gosh.
She's the clean one. Yeah, so
look out, folks.
I sincerely hope you stay together forever.
There may be some paperwork that Jamie can suggest to you. All right, folks. See you in the fun half. Wow. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1 half. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up. Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we are back. Oh, folks. Shout out to our Twitch peeps, but we got suspended on Twitch during our broadcast of the derivative product, very derivative product of the CBS debate from last week. Very different product because we're critiquing it. We're critiquing both the candidates. We're also critiquing the journalists. Certainly within the clear, within the IP. My understanding is that these companies like Twitch and YouTube, they make a fairly rational assessment that we can have CBS sue us or we can have Sam Seder sue us. Which would we prefer? Which would we rather not happen? Well, we would rather not have CBS happen because they have deeper pockets than Sam Seder does. CBS, I believe, is owned by Viacom. Sam Seder is owned by MajorityReportRadio.com. I was trying to. That's one of our.
Wait, who owns that?
I own that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I do not have the deep pockets that Viacom has. And apparently, someone targeted our channel along with other left channels that were streaming the debate. I think Chapo got taken down. I think David Pakman got taken down.
I think Binder, the Surfs.
Yes, the Surfs and Doomed, Matt Binders got taken down. And Binder, of course, is a journalist for Mashable. And so he dug into it. For me, I'm like, oh, well, okay. I got too much on my plate. I can't deal with that. Eventually, when does it get turned back on? Tomorrow, 5 weeks from now, a month? I'm constantly overwhelmed by everything. So, and he dug into it, and apparently it was not CBS that took it down. It was just some rando who was probably some right winger, I think, who is doing their best to disrupt what we do. You know, obviously not just us. I don't want to make it like we're, you know, I'm not one to play the martyr here. They're obviously attacking all of the left to disrupt us. And, you know, speaking for myself, whoever you are, dude, suck it. I don't care. But, you know, for those of you, I just want to say those who watch the show on Twitch on a daily basis and then come there when we have debates, thank you. And thanks for bearing with us. Thanks for returning after we get suspended. You know, and, you know, that dude, you know, we will beat you. I mean, not physically. I mean, we're saying we're just going to win.
Not with our speech.
Not with our speech.
That you won't be able to censor.
That's right. I mean, I don't know. Hassan apparently does some syncing thing or something like that where he syncs it or I don't know what, but we're going to come up with something if that happens again on Twitch. But nobody is as diversified as I am. Like, we don't grow maybe as fast as other people on different platforms and don't monetize it or optimize it as much because as far as I'm concerned, like, I like to spread out. Like, I am conservative when it comes in terms of like how aggressive I am business-wise. I like to just
throw the seeds out there into the field. I
throw the seeds out there, but then I also, no, that is not the proper analogy. That is not it at all. No, because what I am like one of the, like, you know how they say like you can do like a growth investor, like an aggressive investor, or like a conservative one where you just try not to lose money. That's what I am. I don't worry about like, you know, what's my Twitter percentage of
engagement.
Yeah. I don't even know what that. I didn't even know the word.
Can't keep a good stream down.
Yeah, we'll just, you know, and yeah, that's why we have our Vimeo. It costs a little bit of money, but if we want to get it up there, we'll have it up there. And so we'll always put our backup. That's what we should always do. Put that backup address in the description for moments like that. And that way, we're going to take some phone calls today. And that way we'll always be covered. So, phones are live, ladies and gentlemen. Phones are live.
There's no speakerphone and give your one comment or question ready.
I certainly will. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, let's do a little bit of. There was just a little piece of news. Yahoo News is reporting the CDC was supposed to hold a phone press briefing at noon about COVID-19. It's been postponed without any explanation. This administration's so good at keeping everybody from panicking. Here is Friday night, Donald Trump saying that this whole thing, where I don't know, how many cases do we have now worldwide? 120,000 now? What did we have? 80,000, like when I said this maybe a week ago? Remember, we're 14 days behind. And, but according to Donald Trump, it's a hoax.
Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. You know that, right? Coronavirus. They're politicizing it. We did one of the great jobs. You say, how's President Trump doing? They go, oh, not good, not good. They have no clue. They don't have any clue. They can't even count their votes in Iowa. They can't even count. No, they can't. They can't count their votes. One of my people came up to me and said, Mr. President, they tried to beat you on Russia. That didn't work out too well. They couldn't do it. They tried the impeachment hoax. That was on A Perfect Conversation. They tried anything. They tried it over and over. They've been doing it since she got in. It's all turning. They lost. It's all turning. Think of it. Think of it. And this is their new hoax. But, you know, we did something that's been pretty amazing. We're 15 people in this massive country. And because of the fact that we went early, we could have had a lot more than that. We're doing great. Our country is doing so great.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things. Obviously, like, it's hard to get people to take the steps that you need to take to sort of contain this when you call it a hoax. And the other thing is that they're making a bet. They're making a bet that because these things can blow over, right? Like, in fact, if you properly address it, hopefully it won't, get out of control and it goes away. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't properly address it, right? Like, if there's a 60% chance a massive hurricane is going to hit your beachfront community, you leave. And if it doesn't hit it, you haven't made a mistake by leaving. Still the smart thing to do.
Seems like he's completely given up on handling the coronavirus very well. Because he could have gone the other way. Like, I'm handling it great. Nobody handles it better than Donald Trump. But he's like, he doesn't even think that's an option.
Well, I think he's trying to get maximum political value out of it. Now, has it been politicized? I don't know what that means. Like, when you screw up in the way that they've screwed, where you need a whistleblower, where there's a whistleblower, there's a problem there. And the idea that, like, this is what politics is. How are we going to distribute our resources? How are we going to react to what is a threat to society? That's what politics is. Varying degrees of urgency, varying degrees of seriousness and whatnot. But that's what politics is. Redistributing the wealth that is generated by society to the benefit of society. Or, in some instances, preventing the redistribution of the benefits of society to all of society, right? Because that's what it is. When you make money, when you make a ton of money, that is the benefits of society. You could be the smartest, best business person in the world. You could be Michael Bloomberg. But if society hasn't been organized on the day that you were born, guess what? You don't become a billionaire. You don't become anything. You're just running around hoping not to get eaten by something or killed by something or destroyed by the elements. You get nothing. And anybody who thinks that that everybody gets exactly what they deserve based upon their merit is deluding themselves. It's absurd. Like, honestly, a child learns very early that that's not the case, right? But put that aside for a moment. Like, the fact of the matter is that he's taking a big bet. And the other thing I would observe from that is that he's feeling his oats. Like, he's just like, I'm on full comedy tour now. We got other clips that will bring that out, but it's pretty nuts to watch this, and it's only going to get worse. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, it's Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. You were really sitting on you did one of those things where you call and you get busy and you keep calling. You have it on repeat dial.
Yeah, I had to get in today because, I'm not normally very sentimental.
Mm-hmm.
I like to tell a lot of jokes, but, Kobe Bryant died. I wasn't a big Lakers fan, but it puts things into perspective that things can change. And then this coronavirus, I don't know if you've heard about it, but they've been talking about it a lot in the news.
Yeah.
And they were saying the other day on the news that it mostly is just killing boomers. And I thought, God, I got to call Sam and let him know I love him. You mean a lot to me. And, you know, I'm just sorry if this is the way that you go. You know, you're right. I know you're right in that demographic of you know, really old people. And, you know, so I love you, and thank you for all that you do.
That's really sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ronald Reagan. Really, thank you. That is, I'm going to remember that for a long, long time. That call. Thank you.
You're really high at risk if you have asymmetrical nostrils, too.
Yeah, that's a big problem, too. Yep. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. This is John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. I had a feeling that was you, buddy. How are you? What do you have for us today?
No, I'm good. In the history of the country, there's rarely been a candidate with the strong left agenda that has been this close to winning the nomination from a major political party like Bernie Sanders, who will be on his way to achieving a phenomenal goal with a strong performance on the most important day of his campaign so far, and it's happening tomorrow. California has a total of 415 delegates, and 144 are based on statewide totals, and Bernie has a polling average of 35% of the votes. In the last two polls conducted on Saturday and Sunday, Biden is averaging 22%. And if you can find the polls from last week, Biden's total is 19%. Since California residents did start voting at the beginning of February and use mail-in ballots, the question remains: what percentage of California voters have already cast their ballots? My guess is over 60%.
Wow!
And since Biden was polling under the 15% threshold for most of the month, how much will this new surge help him? I think it will hit the 15% viability threshold, but his neglect of the state when voting started will also have an impact on his total delegate count. Warren's polling average is exactly at 15% viability threshold, and whether or not she hits that threshold could add 40 delegates or more to the Sanders delegate total. In a best-case scenario, Bernie would be the only candidate to hit the 15% threshold and win all 144 allocated statewide. So Texas has 228 delegates and 79
So now let me.
I just want
to use that breakdown for something that has been vexing me, because the question I have had is, you know, should I be, you know, and I don't think Elizabeth Warren is going to drop out before Super Tuesday, and obviously perfectly within her rights to stay in, this and that. But like I've been curious is, would it actually be helpful for Bernie if Warren dropped out? But like when you have a scenario like that, right, where Warren and Biden, let's say, are at 14%, my answer is probably no, because it could push Biden over the threshold in that scenario. You know, because all he needs is 1%, you know, from Warren in that instance. But it's so hard to sort of assess these things. But go ahead. That's I just wanted to illustrate that question in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I've asked myself the same question. I mean, obviously, you know, you want Bernie Sanders to win as much as he can, and then the big question is, you know, if she stays in till the end, is she going to actually, you know, form a coalition with Sanders? And I've been talking about that for over a year now. And at first it seemed like they would, because they weren't attacking each other. And then, you know, we had the conversation a few months ago when she started to do that. And now I'm not so sure. But I mean, it's going to be tough. I mean, for Bernie to hit 50% on his own, and I mean, I hope he does. You know, I think everybody's been working really hard that he does. But you know, he does need ideological allies. I mean, this happens all over the country. I mean, all over the world, and you know, where there's many political parties, and you have to have coalitions. And right now, you know, Warren is his only potential coalition partner, and everybody else is going against him.
Yep.
And so that's very important. So, yeah, Texas has 228 delegates and 79 are based on statewide totals. So Bernie leads with 30% in an average of polls. Biden's at 23%, even though if you add up just 2 polls conducted last Thursday, he's at 26. Bloomberg is at 18. So he's dropped to 14.5 under the viability threshold, which should help Bernie obviously get more delegates. Warren's at 14%, but is at 15.5 in the last 2 polls. So that's something we're also seeing. I think that all this anti-Bernie talk is actually helping Warren just slightly, and that may make her viable in a few states. So
what's amazing about this is that, and you can confirm this for me, 6 months ago, the idea of Sanders beating Biden in Texas was, not insane, but people were not suggesting that. I mean, this is a big deal that he is up by 5 points in Texas.
Yeah, definitely. I actually tweeted yesterday how a couple of months ago you were asking me, jokingly to deliver Texas for him. And, at the time I was thinking, God, he's down by 20 points in the latest, CNN SSRS poll. And I didn't say that on the air because, why should I? You don't want to
be accurate.
Encourage negativism. But yeah, it's incredible. And I just want to express my
what
gratitude
did you
to
do,
the Latino community.
John?
I'm sorry?
What did you do? I appreciate you doing what I told you to do, but I'm curious exactly what you did to get those polls to flip.
Well, I think it's the Latino community is what it is. I mean, you look at the entrance polls from Nevada, and he got 51%. And there's a poll, Sean McElwee's poll, the Data Progress poll in Texas has them also getting 51% of the Latino vote in Texas. And the UC Berkeley poll also has 51%. Some of the other polls don't have quite as much, but I mean, they're all, high 30s, in the 40s, around 50%. And it was just incredible to see, when they opened the office a few weeks ago here in San Antonio. I went down there to give some signs. I had some extra signs that I just wanted to give to people, and there were tons of people waiting, and there were working class people. I mean, and it was incredible. They had a mariachi band, and it was like, this is, so different than his 2016 run, which, he got demolished. Now everybody knows that he's a fighter, for Latin rights and immigration reform and just everything that Bernie believes in. I mean, he's really resonated with the Latino community, and that's really going to help him incredibly. So I mean, that's just been incredible to see. North Carolina. That's, on Friday I tweeted that he had leads in the top 5 states with delegates, and that's kind of diminished now. I mean, it's 110 delegates and 38 are based on statewide polls. So Bernie is now down by a couple of points to Biden. But it's again, Biden is surging. Bloomberg is at 16 or 15 in the last polls, and that's really important. The more even if like Bloomberg, if he hits the viability factor, if he doesn't do that, it's going to add so many delegates to Bernie's total, and so I mean that's really important. Virginia, 99 delegates. Also, I mean, the Data for Progress poll was really the only recent poll, and he did great in that. 28% of the vote. Obviously before the last debate and before all this anti-Bernie talk, kind of commenced. So Biden was at 19, and Warren and Bloomberg were at 17. So it's just we're hoping for delegate splits in the South, and with as few people viable as possible, besides Bernie, And, he's doing great in Massachusetts. He has a 5-point lead over Warren with nobody else looking like they're viable. I'm hearing what you're saying about the people knocking on the doors. Biden was only at 10%, so we'll see. Buttigieg was at 13%. And, he was viable in a few states. He was viable in Maine and Utah and Arkansas. And so that was a bit surprising. So he had 13% in Massachusetts. And, I'm hearing talk, is he going to endorse Biden?
Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. I got some breaking news. Amy Klobuchar suspending her campaign for president. Reported by NBC News.
Damn. They are consolidating fast.
Yeah, that is, wow. That's very surprising. What does that mean for Minnesota? Let's see.
I think it's actually going to be good for Bernie. I mean, because Bernie was only I think 6 points behind her, and so he could be the only viable candidate. I understand, obviously a lot of Klobuchar voters, even more so within Buttigieg, ideologically will probably go to Biden, and she was under pressure to drop out. But, Biden was doing terribly in Minnesota.
Well, I see. This is what I have. This is what I have in the last poll that took place. I guess it was a week ago. I haven't seen any more recent polls than this. Maybe Brendan, you can find some. The last poll I saw was by the Star Tribune Mason-Dixon poll. It was from February 17th to February 20th. Now, these numbers could be very different, particularly after South Carolina, right? But she's dropped out. She's endorsing Biden. Now, Biden was at 8 at that point. Klobuchar was at 29. This is the last poll. Sanders at 23. Warren at 11. Biden at 8. Bloomberg at 3. Buttigieg at 3. I don't know
at 3
what Klobuchar's voters, where they would go, in this instance. But with 29 points, there's more than enough to make Biden viable, right? Do they have early voting in Minnesota? Can we check on that?
I really don't know. Probably. They probably do. Pretty progressive state. But I don't know for sure. But the split there, if Biden, I think Sanders will definitely still win because there's going to be some diffusion still, and I don't think all of Klobuchar voters are just going to go to Biden. Probably I don't know, 60 to 75 will because they do fit together ideologically, but. I still think Bernie's going to win. We had a delegate split before. I had Klobuchar. I just was about to print this up. I'm going to do all my districts on Twitter. So far I've done every one. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do every single district. I think.
Well, you'll be able to do it. You'll also be able to do it on the Majority Report on our live coverage tomorrow night of the Super Tuesday. Great.
But there will be a delegate split between them. Like I said, I had Klobuchar with 37 delegates. I did just finish that, and Bernie with 30. And so Bernie will get more delegates. I think than Biden. I don't think there's any doubt in that. So it'll actually help Bernie in Minnesota, and it's not going to make any difference anywhere else because she doesn't have any support anywhere else.
Right. It's going to be interesting in Minnesota. This is where having Warren in the race, this is one where it seems to me probably helps Sanders on some level in terms of diffusing how many people go to Biden. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's true. Very, very much so. Bernie's going to do great in Colorado. He's got a huge lead, with I think, where's he at? I think he's at 31% of the vote. Warren's at 18%, and that's also another mail-in ballot state. So, we're not going to know for, a week or 2 weeks. But, here's what we are going to know from California.
Why we're doing any
Colorado.
coverage tomorrow night. We should really be doing it in a week.
Yeah, but we're going to know. We're going to see like 60% of the vote is going to be in both of those states, with Bernie with a 10-point lead.
Hads, let me ask you this.
Be a lot.
You would know this, John. I don't mean to interrupt you, but early voting. Is there any data that you can provide for us that shows that that the early votes tend to favor Sanders? I mean, that is my hunch, because Sanders voters tend to be more enthusiastic than, let's say Biden voters. B, he's got the best infrastructure and ground game of anybody. I think that's, maybe short of Bloomberg. And Bloomberg's, we can talk about the qualitative differences between people who are getting overpaid and people who are underpaid and going out and doing that work. And I think also Bernie supporters tend to be probably a little more skeptical of the balloting process and will go out and maybe go out early to do that voting. And theoretically are also don't necessarily have the same flexibility with their work that you might if you were, a Bloomberg supporter. I don't know. Is my intuition right? Do we have data on that?
No, I think Sean McElwee actually touched on that. I mean, what we see is a lot more like of the progressive mail-in vote coming in later towards the election. But I mean, Bernie's got such a big lead that I think he's going to have, a big lead also immediately. I think I said tomorrow and then going into Wednesday, he's going to have that big lead. It may not be as big as his total lead, but it's still going to be a big lead. Right. And as far as in other states, it's just the opposite as far as voting, having early vote. Like in Texas, more the conservative, the early voters, the Democrats, usually have early vote, and the conservatives like to vote on election day, just as a percentage. So it's a kind of a weird dichotomy there. But Colorado is just really looking great. And again, Biden's at 11, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's going to hit that threshold. I don't think he is with all that early vote. I mean, and so I mean, this is another state where it's going to be a split that's going to be very beneficial to Bernie. So that's going to be great. One thing that I've been talking about for a few years now is if Bernie does run again, is the way I used to always phrase it, is he's got to do better in the South. And so there really hasn't been any polling in Tennessee with their 62 delegates, in Alabama with their 52. I think it's actually 64 delegates in Tennessee. Since July, so we don't really know where Bernie stands, but that viability, in those states is super important to Bernie, right. And also, hitting the numbers, hitting 15% in each congressional district is really important also. So I just hope he can do that, and I'm hoping it's going to happen. I mean, he's also in Maine. I mean, there's only 24 delegates in Maine, but he had a 9-point lead over Buttigieg. Was at 14, Biden was at 12. So, Biden may get in there, but I mean, he's still going to win, probably 2/3 of the delegates there. Not a huge take.
Right.
But, I expect him to win in Utah also.
All right. Well, John, hold on. I don't want to, we don't want to give it away for free. We'll save it for tomorrow night. All right.
All right.
All right. Thanks for the call.
Okay.
Buddy.
Sounds
Appreciate
great,
it.
Sam. Okay. Thank you.
Man.
All right. Bye-bye.
It's getting real, folks.
You're always saying people need to vote strategically, right? At this point in the game, progressives who support Warren need to see what's happening.
I think that's absolutely right.
And recognize a vote for Warren is a vote for Biden in this primary.
I think, look, the bottom line is like I say, Elizabeth Warren, I can understand why why the campaign is staying in. As you start to see Buttigieg and then Klobuchar drop, it becomes more incumbent upon Warren, I think, to get out of the race. I can't imagine that they would do that before Super Tuesday. It's just it's too much competition, too much of too competitive, and too much of sometimes it's hard to give up the ghost. And I think the ghost was, and I think it was a perfectly, reasonable guess was, that she could end up being that candidate who, if you had like one person gets 30%, another person gets 35%, and she gets like 28%. She could have been the candidate who is, who would be okay as a compromise between both sides. But that's not happening. And sometimes it's hard to give up the ghost and to sort of see that. And, but at this point, and I think, there's a lot of people who've been waiting to vote for Warren, and I can understand why, people want to do that, because she has garnered a lot of respect from people in various quarters, deservedly so, in my opinion, over the years. And, in retrospect, I think like a lot of people probably wish that she had run in 2016. There was a movement to draft her in 2014 and 2015. She took a pass, and then, Bernie was waiting on her to come in. She did not. And so he ran, which I think was largely an issue campaign for him at the beginning. I've always contended, had he gotten in 6 to 8 months earlier, I think he could have actually won in 2016. But I can understand people wanting to cast that vote for Warren, out of sentimentality. But understand the price of that at this juncture may very well be you get Joe Biden. And I mean, that's why, like, I don't think she will, but I would not be so shocked if she did drop out in the next, 10 hours, because look, one of the reasons why she got into this, to politics, I remember when she was writing on Talking Points Memo, in the cafe thing, they had some like other, blogs were weird at the time. And she was writing about bankruptcy and how over 50% of our bankruptcy were a function of medical expenses. And the thing that pulled her into politics in the first place, not policy, but to actually like get involved in it, was around Joe Biden's bankruptcy bill. And that is the sort of the origin story of her in politics. And I think that's why if she came to see, that she was in some way now, particularly with Klobuchar dropping out, and this sort of like further consolidation. Phone thought I said serious. Or Siri or whatever. I don't want to say it. That's why it would not surprise me if she did. On the other hand, I also know like the dynamic that you're surrounded by people who want you to stay in because they, when a candidate drops out, everybody feels it, obviously. And there were very high hopes. And I think there were people probably high up in that campaign who didn't necessarily, I'm sure they all have her best interests in mind, but they, sometimes people get a little myopic. I think a lot of her campaign people higher up spent too much time reading Twitter, frankly. I mean, I don't mean literally, although maybe it was. I just think that they got very myopic. And I think I can imagine if I'm the candidate and I'm surrounded by people like that, the idea of like, hey, think about what your agenda in politics is in this very moment, probably it's a hard message to come across there, and you feel like you owe your, supporters. People have been very supportive of her for a long time. And so you don't want to deny them the opportunity to vote. But at the same time, it's also like we are very close to that sort of like critical point where it's either Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. And, that's what we're looking at here. Like I say, it's not 100% clear to me, but Warren drops out. Some of that stuff goes to Klobuchar if she's still in the race. If she's not, it gets split pretty evenly. But I think, we could be at that point where Biden is going to hit the threshold in most of the states now anyways.
Don't forget, Klobuchar has given Biden half a New York Times endorsement, too. So it'd be nice if Bernie could have some of that fire on his side. Well,
yeah. I guess that's a half an endorsement. I mean, by the time it gets to Biden, it's like a quarter endorsement, right? So Donald Trump goes out on Friday night in a rally, says that COVID-19 is a hoax. And then, of course, they've got to go and they've got to respond to that, in the press conference. What's his face? Mike Pence. Let's put up that picture of Mike Pence trying to pray away. Do we have it? Take a look at this picture. Here it is right here. There's a bunch of white guys. Oh, there's one woman in the back. There's one woman in that room. There's a bunch of white guys bowing their heads, praying to get God's help with COVID-19. And they're praying. I mean,
that kind of use of emojis, the praying hands, the strong arm, and the American flag thing, that's fascism in three emojis.
I was gonna say, like, hey, how can we best represent fascism taking over? What was that book? The Singing Christian. I can't remember now. It's a satire, but that's basically it. So here is Pence, the high priest, and Donald Trump dealing with the idea that, this is having to address the fact that he keeps calling it a hoax.
I could just ask you said the other day in the cabinet room with African-American leaders, you've got to get away from politics. You were down in Charleston last night using the word hoax when talking about Democrats. Somebody now is dead from this. Do you regret that kind of talk?
No. Hoax referring to the action that they take to try and pin this on somebody because we've done such a good job. The hoax is on them. I'm not talking about what's happening here. I'm talking what they're doing. That's the hoax. That's just a continuation of the hoax, whether it's the impeachment hoax or the Russia hoax. This is what I'm talking about. Certainly not referring to this. How could anybody refer to this? This is very serious stuff. But the way they refer to it, because these people have done such an incredible job, and I don't like it when they are criticizing these people, and that's the hoax. That's
it's amazing how it's this thing, that, this, that. I don't want, I'm not going to say the words, but it's all going to be Voldemort. That's all it basically is. Later, Mike Pence, who in that last clip we just saw with him, who was literally hiding, like if there was like a potted plant there, he would be hiding behind it, Mike Pence. But he is in charge of the nation's response to the virus, which, of course, my first understanding is that the vice president's office was handing out clovers of garlic, not to ingest, just to wear around your neck to keep the virus away, and recommending prayers. Here he is on with Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper asks him directly, like, have you seen all the lunatics surrounding your president?
Like his son.
Like his son. Claiming that this is all just sort of like The real problem with this is that it's being politicized.
A lot of unfortunate rhetoric on the left and on the right about the coronavirus.
Pause it for 1 second. What is the unfortunate rhetoric on the left? I think one New York Times columnist, I don't know who it is, called it the Trump virus. But I think they were talking about it sort of like metaphorically. Like, what is the, like, what did Chapo make a bad joke about the virus? And that's the equivalency. I mean, the site that's on the podcast that's on Patreon made a joke about the virus, and also the president did. So
former Gawker employee.
Right, exactly.
I did find it a little distasteful when they ran that chyron comparing the coronavirus to Bernie.
Right.
A lot of unfortunate rhetoric on the left and on the right about the coronavirus. I want you to take a listen to something that the president's son, Don Jr., said about Democrats and the coronavirus just on Friday.
Anything that they can use to try to hurt Trump, they will. But for them to try to take a pandemic and seemingly hope that it comes here and kills millions of people so that they could end Donald Trump's streak of winning is a new level of sickness.
Can we agree that neither Democrats nor Republicans want Americans to get the coronavirus and die from it? I mean, that does seem like it seems like very extreme rhetoric. I don't expect you to criticize the president's son, but you don't think that Democrats want people to contract this disease, do you?
Well, I think what the president said earlier this week.
Pause it. I just like it, this is not a gotcha question, right? You don't think that the Democrats want millions of people to die from this, do you? I'm going to need to hedge a little bit on this response. Like, I do a podcast and YouTube show, and I don't think, like, if someone asked me, like, do you think Republicans want millions of people to die from this? I could even just go like, absolutely not, because you can't really sort of like, choose who gets to die, right? Like even if you had to hedge bets, like you could say it that way. Or, I think I'd probably say, well, no, but they just they don't really want to exert the effort to prevent that from happening if it's going to come out of their pocket. Like, but I'm not the vice president of the United States. Oh, well. And I think you should be able to just sort of come right out and say, of course not, Jake. Now, with that said, it's a political season, whatever. But he couldn't even say that because he's going to get in trouble.
The president said earlier this week.
No, go back. I think that moment where he's got to
and die from it. I mean, that does seem like it seems like very extreme rhetoric. I don't expect you to criticize the president's son, but you don't think that Democrats want people to contract this disease, do you?
Well, I think what the president said earlier this week, and his charge to me is to remind the American people that the risk is low, to assure the American people that we're ready, but also to say, as the president said, this is no time for politics. And frankly, I think that was Don Jr.'s point, that there has been some very strong rhetoric directed at the president by some members of Congress and
you don't think that was strong rhetoric?
Well,
you said seemingly Democrats want millions of Americans to die of coronavirus.
But responding to the kind of things that have been hurled is understandable. But what the president's charged us to do, in my conversations with Speaker Pelosi, with Senator Schumer, my conversations with Republican and Democrat governors, is to set the politics aside on this and to work the problem.
Now, you don't think it's being a little bit political when you refuse to say, yeah, no, of course, I don't think Democrats want millions of people to die.
He said it was understandable, but in the tone of voice that's saying it's worth condemnation. So it's like, did you catch that?
He did where he said it's understandable that the rhetoric, whatever.
Like he tried to sneak it past Tapper what he was actually talking about.
Well, they're setting up a conspiracy theory right now, I think, that this virus is somehow like a communist plot to take down Trump.
If it goes bad, it's the Reds.
Yes, and I think what this guy's is Mike Pence's entire sort of MO everything I say that agrees with the president, I'm just repeating what the president said. I got my arm's length, like, and he's deluding himself, of course. Like, I'm sorry, buddy. You're his boy. That's it. That's over. But he's also, then he's like saying, but, on the other hand, I can't say anything that if the president hears that in any way contradicts anything he's saying will be problematic too. So I'm going to just, we're going to pray and do a little praying. There you go. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pray.
It makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, there you go. You should feel good. Here is Alex Azar. He's the head of the Health and Human Services. Now, there was a whistleblower that came out and said that when Trump overrode the CDC, which said, hey, we should not be flying these people back into the country. We should allow them to stay sequestered where they are, quarantined where they are, because, for whatever reasons, we don't, it's like, it just increases the risk, right? Like, hey, I know you think you can handle that nitroglycerin, but maybe it's just not worth it moving it. Maybe just leave it there.
Wait, transportation is bad if you're trying to quarantine something?
Yeah, apparently that turns out that way.
Weird.
But you know what's even worse is once they get there, to send a bunch of people who have no training, and you don't want to make them look like they're doing anything serious. Like, this was the watchwords of the administration with this whole thing. Cash. Keep it cash.
Chill.
Everybody's just got to be casual because we don't want to spook the markets. And a whistleblower told us basically, hey, none of those people who were sent down there had the proper training or equipment by design. And then we hear that it was around that Air Force base is where people started contracting it because probably some of the workers got infected. And here's Alex Azar basically saying, I take that whistleblower complaint very seriously. Incidentally, I think there's already been retribution against that whistleblower.
Finally, a whistleblower in your department raised a concern about a number, I think a dozen HHS workers who were apparently sent to receive the first evacuees from China, she says, without proper gear, without proper training, and she raised this concern. I know you say you're investigating, but that woman, was she reassigned, as she claims, after she raised this concern?
So first, it is vitally important that we protect our employees in any situation. It is vitally important that we follow
Pause
the
it for 1 second. Again, this is like, I feel like I could teach a course on this, with just like these two things of like how you can avoid answering a question. Go back. The question is, she said there were these problems and then she was reassigned. Was she telling the truth? First, let me state a very general principle that I am sure we have not upheld. Second, let me just assure you that principle that we've not upheld, we're definitely going to uphold. And third, in the unlikely event that we did not uphold that principle that I've pretended that we've upheld, I promise you we're going to investigate deeply into the question as to whether we upheld that principle. That's my guess where he's going with this.
I know you say you're investigating, but that woman, was she reassigned, as she claims, after she raised this concern?
So first, it is vitally important that we protect our employees in any situation. It is vitally important that we follow the appropriate isolation or quarantine protocols in dealing with individuals. And it's important that no whistleblower ever be retaliated against, and we will never permit retaliation against a whistleblower. Let me give you the facts that we know so far. First, every HHS employee who was involved in the allegations in the whistleblower's complaint has now been well over 14 days from any interaction with individuals, and nobody is symptomatic or has the disease. So there was no risk. There's no risk to the people of HHS, no risk to the community, even if the allegations prove to be true. So that's a very important fact. We also have offered voluntary testing to our employees. It's not medically indicated because they don't have the virus, but if it comforts them, we're going to get them tested so they know.
But what happened to the woman?
Pause it. You haven't already tested these people? You haven't tested all of your HHS people? We're going to voluntarily, really? How about mandatorily? How about doing that yesterday, guy? It's been 14 days since you brought them back. What have you been doing for the past 14 days that you've not been testing people? I'm not talking just about those people that apparently had to be quarantined. We're talking about the competence of an agency that we, in moments like this, rely on quite a bit. So let me assure you that we, probably did not mess up, but maybe we did. But to the extent that we did, we haven't noticed any problems from it. And, just in an abundance of caution, because...
If it comforts them, we're going to get them tested so they know.
But what happened to the woman? Was she reassigned? She had said more than 10 days ago that she was reassigned. You certainly know whether that happened.
Well, I'm not going to discuss personnel matters. That wouldn't be proper for me to do. But there will be no retaliation against this individual or any other individual. We are grateful. If our employees raise concerns about our processes, if something proves not to be right, we're grateful for that.
If she was reassigned, I know you can't discuss it. If she was reassigned because of raising this complaint, you're saying she'll be restored to the position?
Nobody would ever be reassigned or discriminated against or prejudiced or retaliated against because of raising concerns about the functioning of the department.
And you can't tell me whether that happened?
I'm not going to tell you whether that happened because that's still under investigation. We're doing a...
Wait, pause it. Wait a second. So there's no way that happened. Can you tell me if it happened? Well, I can't tell you because we're still investigating. Like, what kind of agency are you running that you have to investigate as to whether somebody got reassigned? And why couldn't he tell us? Like, it's too sensitive of information. That's top secret.
By I can't tell you, it means I don't want to tell you.
Right. Well, I don't want to tell you because we haven't finished the investigation.
Right.
But I can tell you it did not happen, and I can confirm that. But, of course, I can't tell you about the status of what happened where she's happened.
And they don't have to tell us. These people are in power. That's why their lies are so sloppy, because they know it doesn't matter.
That's right. All they're trying to do, on Fox, is just make it sound like it's reasonable. I'm like, Chris, come on. What are you doing? Seriously? You're not going to get a Peabody for this.
Do better, Chris Wallace.
Come on, Chris Wallace. What are you doing? That's what they're all saying to him after they get up in that crisp. Really letting us down.
We have to investigate it, but that whistleblower was probably lying about why she was reassigned. That's what he's saying there, basically.
Yeah, and I got news for you. We would never reassign someone in the incredibly narrow circumstances I'm about to lay out that would actually be impossible to achieve, as opposed to the sort of the general story. We would never, ever reassign someone who criticized our internal workings if they misspelled some words in a very unique and different way than one would imagine. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, renewed vigor Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen. Honestly, the number of reporters I have seen, and I don't know why they're not reporting on it. This has always been like a big, sort of like, this was a big issue back in the blogging days. It's like, if reporters know something, and the thing is like, if reporters know something, they should report it. But the question is like, how do you as a reporter, I've been covering Joe Biden, let's say, I'm not talking about me, but I'm paraphrasing. What I know multiple reporters have said behind, not publicly. I've been covering Joe Biden since 2010 or 2005 or 2012. I was with him back in 2016, or I was with him, a year ago, and he's lost the step. And he's got some good days and he's got some bad days, which I can tell you from my own, personal experience, not me, but with, folks Joe Biden's age, people who are close to me, that there's some good days and there's some bad days. But what is the general trend in the progression is, once this starts, it does not get better. It does not go the other way. And Joe Biden's out there, and he's got, this is his latest pitch.
We're looking for getting things done. And Bernie doesn't have a very good track record of getting things done in the United States Congress, the United States Senate. And much of what he's proposing is very, very much pie in the sky. He's talking about spending $60 trillion and not raising taxes on the middle class and being able to get it done quickly and so on. I've laid out clearly how we can get a health care plan covering everybody and have a Medicare option for those who want it, and we can get it done quickly. I've laid out a game plan as to how we can get things done. And I will and be honest with you, I mean, he hadn't had much of a record of getting anything done in the United States House of Representatives or the Senate. I think he's passed 7, 8 bills. I don't know. He's worked with John McCain. We were talking about John earlier off the record here. John, he did some good work on veterans. He's on the Veterans Committee. But I've gotten major things done. I'm able to cross the aisle and get things done. And so I think it's about...
Pause it for a second. I mean, this is... first of all, John McCain was a Republican. So Bernie Sanders has done that. He, during a Republican Congress, controlled Congress, had more amendments to bills than anybody else. Now, it is true. Joe Biden has probably forged more legislation with Republicans than Bernie Sanders. And I got news for you. It's the legislation that keeps you from discharging your student debt in bankruptcy. It's the legislation that in bankruptcy did not allow for a cram down if your house was foreclosed in the financial crisis. It is the legislation that was written essentially by lobbyists for the credit card company. Now, fortunately, Joe Biden was never successful in his decades-long attempts to cut your Social Security and to cut your Medicare. And it is true that Bernie Sanders has been fighting for things like expanding your Social Security. Has that happened yet? No. But we do know, in between the time that there was that Joe Biden, because he's the guy, remember, he's the guy during the Obama administration, his push to cut Social Security, and now one of the leaders, along with Warren, to be fair, in getting the Democratic caucus in the Senate to vote to expand Social Security was Bernie Sanders. If you ask people who work for Amazon, who's responsible for me getting a $15 minimum wage? They're going to tell you Bernie Sanders. If you ask people, why are we even having a conversation about Medicare for all? Why are we even talking about that as an aspiration? And if you think Joe Biden would be calling for any expansion of any of these programs without Bernie Sanders pushing him from that direction, then I've got a Joe Biden candidacy to sell you. I mean, this is the fact. This is the fact. And I don't know what Bernie Sanders can achieve as president. I don't know that it's... I don't know what Joe Biden could achieve. If we have a Republican-controlled Senate, I would imagine those... I don't want Joe Biden reaching out to Mitch McConnell because I don't like what's going to end up there, frankly. But I do know this, that if both of them get stymied, people are going to know who did the stymieing if Bernie Sanders is the president. And it may not have an implication in the first 2 years, but it could have an implication for the second 2 years. And it certainly could have an implication for the term after that. Democrats for too long would not wage fights because they were afraid that they were going to lose them. They would not be ambitious. And what happens is that you do not have the progress that you need. And you build this type of, resentment amongst the country. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
And much of what he's proposing is very, very much pie in the sky.
Yeah, pie in the sky.
Have you heard of Joe Hill, Sam?
Joe Hill? No, I haven't.
So The Preacher and the Slave is a song written by Joe Hill in 1911. I'm just going to take from Wikipedia here. It was written as a parody of the hymn In the Sweet By and By. Copying and or using musical style of the hymn was also a way of capturing the emotional resonance of that style of music. So anyway, the origin of the term pie in the sky is actually exactly opposite to what Biden is using it to disparage Bernie, and I'll play a little bit of it here.
Long-haired preachers come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when asked how about something to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die.
I mean, the point being that when Joe Biden accuses Bernie Sanders of offering pie in the sky, it's actually Joe Biden who's offering pie in the sky. You can't.
Also, he's appropriating leftist culture.
There you go. Exactly. But it's Joe Biden saying, like, look, there's nothing we can do for you while you're here.
Let's just beat Trump.
But let's just beat Trump. And if you want some pie, you'll get it at some other time. I'm the guy who gets you the pie.
If you have a leftist band, cover that song.
Yeah, that's a good song.
And send it in to us. We'll play it.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. I like it.
How are the latest polls looking, Biden versus Trump versus Bernie versus Trump?
Well, I mean,
those are the two best, basically.
Those are the two best, but Bernie consistently now is out, 1 or 2 points within the margin of error. But there's just the fact that there's any data that Biden is going to do better under Trump is just absurd. It's just absurd. It is really just it's people projecting their own concerns onto something that's not real.
Because I'm sympathetic to the need to beat Trump, obviously. But if they each have an equally good chance, why not vote for the candidate who also wants to give you health care?
Well, it could be because you work for a pharmaceutical company and you don't want to necessarily cut into your profits.
There are more of us than there are of them.
Oh, this is nice. Mike Bloomberg was in Alabama. Alabama, he's poured a lot of money into. Bloomberg's whole theory, he was in Arkansas advertising months ago for Super Tuesday. His whole theory is I'm going to pick up some of these delegates down in these states where there's not going to be much competition, where Sanders won't be focusing and where the other campaigns won't have the money to do it. And here is Mike Bloomberg. He is in the Brown Chapel AME church in Selma, Alabama, celebrating the march. What are we, 51 years now, I guess? And I think what he's doing is reading from a bound copy of Forbes magazine, Fortune magazine. I'm joking. But good to the folks at this church who are like, dude, you were criminalizing hundreds of thousands of black youth for years and then lie about why you stopped it. And they're not going to let him come in and pretend like that didn't happen.
More than 200 African Americans were killed. It was one of the worst tragedies in American history.
All right, what you're watching is about a half a dozen people who stood up and turned their backs to him in the congregation.
Continued with Jim Crow and redlining. In today's reading from Isaiah, do right, seek justice, and defend the oppressed was the call to action, and that's what our Greenwood Initiative resolved to do. And we're going to do it by achieving three things. One, we're going to help 1 million more black families own a home.
Photographers reacting.
Two,
yep.
We're going to double the number of black homes.
And the people with their backs to him are just being quiet. They're being respectful, allowing other people to watch as he pretends like he's been, in some measure, here's
not the photo op Mike wanted.
No, probably not. Probably not. And he's got to be out there like, how much money do we have to pay? Do we have to pay? I mean, we're paying everybody, aren't we?
Didn't we rent the church?
Why didn't we? We should have just rented out the church and had an entire bunch of crisis actors.
A standing ovation in the church. Mike.
I want to give a quote from Mike, what Mike Bloomberg said. This is unbelievable. He is at a canvassing event in Manassas, Virginia. He says he's spoken to both Pete Buttigieg and Senator Amy Klobuchar after they decide to drop out of the race. This is the quote. I thought both of them behaved themselves.
Keep your daddy fetish away from us, Bloomberg.
They are my best employees. I've given them a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, I wonder how much.
There you go.
I mean, I'm trying to find the thing where he's like, "Oh, make the whole world." Oh, here it is.
They'll make the whole world behave.
It's a Majority Report clip, so I'm getting foiled by our own clips where.
Everyone's gonna be.
I'll tell you where I'm going.
Oh, beautiful Michael.
First, Iowa, then New Hampshire. Maybe I can get the whole country to behave.
There you go.
Truly blood-curdling.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
The way he wants people to behave is just blood-curdling.
All right. Calling from a 505 area code now. Behave. Incidentally, that is what Andrew Breitbart was famously yelling at some Occupy people, I think it was.
Behave yourself?
Behave.
Wow.
Calling from a 505 area code. People can find that clip somewhere. 505.
Hi, this is Sam from Colorado.
Sam from Colorado?
Yeah, I've been canvassing out here in Colorado, and I just wanted to speak to the electability argument and how the strength in the Latino community plays a huge role in that for Bernie.
Please do.
Yeah, I've been out here, and it's really Bernie or bust. For my neighborhood is really 70% Latino. It's working class neighborhood, and the only word I've heard out here is Bernie. And I think there's also a lot of people that are not going to vote in this primary, but they've seen Bernie on TV and they're excited about him and they feel like he represents them. And so when we talk about the excitement and how that's really important, I think getting the Latino community to come out and vote for the Democrat, which happened in 2008 for Obama, is going to be a huge part of that. And I think that's a huge argument for Bernie.
Yeah, I think that's true too. I mean, I wish we had more data, that's going to come in. We're going to know a lot after Super Tuesday in terms of the Latino community. And I was going to say, I mean, look, I was out there, I knocked on 60 doors. It's a very narrow set, assessment, but every single Latino household, and I should say, last name that struck me as Latin, as Latino or Hispanic, were immediate Bernie supporters. And, small subset, small set. So you can't really make any broad claims from there. But I think anecdotally, we saw that in Nevada. We saw that big time. And so I agree with you. And I'm not sure, what the Sanders campaign has done this time that's different in terms of outreach, but it really does feel like they are doing a much better job of it this time around. Now, maybe they just, there's more awareness of who Bernie is. So appreciate the call, Sam. Keep up the good work.
It's going to feel so good to watch Bernie defeat the most racist and xenophobic president in history with the help of Latino voters.
That will be quite fun. Calling from a 510 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling
and
from?
Illegal.
And illegal. Totally wrong. Millions brought in.
Sam.
Yeah.
Sam, what up, Sam?
Who is this?
What's good, homie?
What's...
You know it's Cold James Cash. It's your boy.
Hey,
you know
what's happening, Cold James?
You know what it is, man.
Yeah,
Let me
how
tell
are
you
you?
something, Sam. I won the King of Iron Fist tournament twice. I won the 2019 Kengan tournament. Not to mention, I won the Kumite in the 80s against Van Damme, Sam. You should already know who I am, man.
You won the Kumite against Van Damme? I don't think so, buddy.
I won the Kumite against Van Damme, man. Come on, Sam. You should know what time it is when I call. No watch on your wrist, man. What up?
Well, I did.
So, Sam.
Yeah. Yes.
First of all, Sam, you know I got my own show now, right?
Yes.
And you do know that Jamie is an official correspondent of my show, man.
I was not aware of that. No.
Yes, she's an official correspondent. She is an official contributor of my show because I need that female perspective, man.
I understand.
You know?
Yes.
Yes. And, Sam, I remember you said it a year ago. You said, you know what, if you just work hard, you know what I'm saying, you work hard, you put in the work, man, you can do something and all that. And I'm like, you know what, Sam, we got damn near 100 patrons. We really doing it, Sam,
Sweet.
And Michael co-signs it. Michael co-signs it. And I got one question for you, Sam.
Yeah.
Do you support black businesses, Sam? Do you or do you not support black and Latino business?
Yes, I do.
You do. So what's it going to take for you to come on the blackest leftist show in America right now? What's it going to take for you, or do you got to be, or do I got to have a degree for you to come on, or do I got to have credentials? What's it going to take for you to be a guest on my show, Sam? 30 minutes out of your time to support black businesses.
Invite.
Yes. Well, you are formally invited, Sam.
Okay.
Next weekend, you are.
Whoa. All right. That is I'm happy to do it. I don't know that I ever say no to any invitation, which I'm not. I don't mean to say that as a way of like diminishing what you're saying, but I'm happy to do it. I have my schedule is tight right now. It's tough. This weekend is Saul's big birthday weekend, but definitely send an email, Majority Reporters, and or do it through Jamie,
and you'll actually get back to me.
Yeah, I mean it'll take a long time, but yes.
Well, Sam, come on, Sam, come on.
Well, I'm not saying it's going to take months. I'm just saying that you got to have patience. I got but yes, I'll do it.
I will vouch that Sam is legitimately frazzled.
Businesses, but what I wanted to call about also, secondly, thank you, and thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Matt, because Matt is also a supporter. Matt supports black businesses. Jamie supports black businesses. Let's see if Sam will come through for you, boy.
All right, we'll see.
But what I've called, though, is that I've been doing heavy work with the East Bay DSA.
Uh-huh.
And, I have worked very, very hard in my old neighborhood of Fruitvale in Oakland, turning it from, just your average neighborhood to turning it around for Bernie. That meant speaking a lot of Spanish. You know what I'm saying? That meant educating people on the issues. And from September up until now, we completely turned that neighborhood into a Bernie spot to the point where as we would approach, they knew we were coming, So it's like I can't stress to people how important it is that, especially Super Tuesday coming, man, that, me, my girl Jennifer Arbuckle from the East Bay DSA, my boy Jordan, Michelle from the East Bay DSA, it's like we all busted our asses. In some instances, it was just two of us. In some instances, it was literally just my girl Jennifer by herself, So when it comes to Bernie taking California, just know that we hit the ground on that. We worked very, very hard because we truly believe in what's going on. And people, with them little comments that people make on Twitter, that world doesn't exist for 99% of the people, man. If Bernie gets the nomination or whatever, you still got to hustle. You still got to get out there and get in people's faces because ain't nothing guaranteed. And with the shenanigans that you see with the Democratic Party pulling, it's more important than ever for people to go out there, and you got to go out there and you got to keep hustling, keep doing what you do, Because a lot of people feel like their activism is just, they want 40 characters or maybe they got a show. No, you got to hear people face to face and you got to talk to them. If you like me and you speak more than one language, make sure people who speak your language know what time it is because this is too important, And I'll say this, Sam, I've done far more as a citizen knocking on people's doors and helping people to register than I ever did as a military when I carried a gun allegedly winning people's freedom. Bullshit, man. I'm doing far more with this, and I'm far more proud of my comrades than I ever was as a soldier, man. So I want to give a big shout out to everybody who's out there knocking on doors and really putting in that work, because we're seeing, you know, the results of it with Bernie pulling ahead. And Sam, once again, thank you for supporting Black and Latino businesses.
Where can people sign up for the Ghetto News Network? That's the name of your show, right? GNN?
Well, patreon.com/GNN Channel 10. And you can also youtube.com/Ghetto News Network. It's literally that. youtube.com/Ghetto News Network. Patreon.com/GNN Channel 10. And like I said, you know, Sam, when you see the email, it's literally going to say GNN Channel 10. It'll be from me, you know, because like I said, I know how much. Oh, yeah, big shout out to Ben Dixon, man, who had one of his best interviews with me, man. He had one of his best, most loosest interviews with me. Ben was going off. He was using the N-word, Sam. It was completely inappropriate, and we loved it.
All right. Fantastic.
You know? So, yeah, thank you again, Sam. And like I said, big shout out to all y'all from the GSA, all y'all from the Bernie campaign, because the Bernie campaign is starting to make the way out there now, but we already laid the groundwork for them. So we're really proud about that. But, yeah, Sam, I hope in the next couple months that we have you on, and it'll be the biggest show ever because, you know, I mean, Sam, you're basically my father, man.
Well, I was not aware of that, but you're making me proud. I appreciate that. Thank you, son.
All right. And Sam, what is the email I hit you on? Or should I
MajorityReporters@gmail.com.
All right. So you're going to be looking out for my email, Sam?
Of course. Of course.
Exactly, because I know you support Black and Latino businesses, Sam. Thank you. I knew you was an ally.
Appreciate
All right,
it,
Jamie. I'll see you next weekend, Jamie. And Matt, keep treating the sisters right, man. I won't have to slap you. All right.
Bye. There you go. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I'm happy to do. I mean, I'm excited to do Cole James Cash's show, but I mean, I'm happy to do any. Here is Donald Trump continuing on with his comedy tour. He's at CPAC, and this is where he launched his presidential campaign. I mean, not specifically, but this is where
the escalator was where he launched.
The escalator was, but this is where, like, the year before that, he really got a sense of like the wall. Like, that's where he tried out this material, and this is him like going back into one of the early rooms, trying out new material. Expect to see this on the campaign trail. He's going up there. It's like the Comedy Cellar for this guy. CPAC. Here he is talking. Who is the woman he's talking about? I'm not clear. Okay, here we go.
She was really mean to Mini Mike. I'll tell you the way.
Oh, he's talking about Warren.
Oh, Warren was really mean to Mini Mike. Okay.
She was really mean to Mini Mike. I'll tell you the way she treated her. He didn't know what hit him. He's going, oh, get me off of this stage. Get me off. Get me off of this stage.
There it is. There's the comedy routine.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's all just a stand-up tour for him from here on out.
Yeah, honestly, it really is. Yeah, that's the
Netflix
thing.
just needs to get him a special.
I've decided to save the country. I'm going to buy Netflix and give Donald Trump a weekly show. I would take it.
Use your money for good.
Not for me. I'm saying for him.
Indeed.
Let's see. What is this? This video of an LADA? This is nuts. So this video comes from Melina Abdullah. And this is there are folks there in front of Jackie Lacey's house, who is the LADA, for a community promise, for a community meeting that she promised with the Black Lives Matter LA crew. They rang her doorbell. They're doing a protest. Apparently the husband answers the door, and this is the way that the DA's husband answers the door when there are people there ringing the doorbell, asking for the community meeting that was promised.
Right now, get off.
Good morning.
Get off
Are
of
you
my
gonna
porch.
shoot me?
I will shoot you. Get off of my porch.
Can you tell Jackie Lacey that we're here?
I don't care who you are. Get off of my porch.
We'll get off your
right
porch.
now.
Can you tell
We're
me?
calling the police right
Good.
now.
Good. Wow.
Now, why would there be a concern about how the community is treated in terms of, let's say, policing in this environment where the DA's husband opens the door with a massive handgun, aiming at people?
Not even brandishing it, just aiming it at people.
Right. This is not like, look, I have a gun here. I feel threatened. It is, get off my porch. We're calling the cops. I have an idea. Call the cops first.
Also, I'm pretty sure he does care who they are.
Well, I think that's the point.
It looks like he's even got his finger in the trigger.
I
It's
know.
hard to
This is
tell.
just
That
nuts.
is the DA's husband. That's not exactly public relations winner.
Right.
There.
I got to think, if I'm the DA, I'd like to think I have enough authority to say to my husband, sweetheart, please don't meet the people who are protesting about how they're treated by the cops with a gun.
Yeah.
Well, I guess she doesn't care. She thinks she's going to get reelected no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that doesn't play with a certain section of voters.
I don't know. I don't know. I need more confirmation as to what we're seeing here in terms of this dinghy, frankly. But look, we have another disaster that's taking place. Well, it's been an ongoing rolling disaster in Syria. And we just don't have anybody, we don't have a foreign service anymore. I have been against intervention in Syria since 2011, maybe before that. But we should be providing money, resources, technology, manpower in terms of dealing with the refugees. We should be attempting to forge some type of peace in that region. I mean, not that I mean, specifically in Syria. We should not have opened the door for the Turks to come in there. Because at the end of the day, who dies in these situations. It's just the civilian population. They get kicked out of their homes. They get killed. They get in rafts and dinghies to try and escape. This is reportedly the Greek Coast Guard, as you can see, trying to sink, essentially, their dinghy. I mean, that appears to be the Greek Coast Guard, right? I mean, that's
what
Greek
the Turkish
writing.
sources of
you
this
can
are saying.
see and it really does look like they're trying to flip. And now now you can hear gunfire. I mean, I think they're trying to pop the boat because they're trying to send them back to Syria. Yeah, I mean, that's Greek writing. And I guess what they're trying to do is shove them back towards Syria.
It's like herding them back into Syria.
It really is horrific. I mean, and look at that. That guy's raising a
dystopia.
Yeah,
Oosh.
those are that's gunfire.
Yeah.
They're trying to, I think, pop the pontoon boat. Really horrible.
These people are just trying to stay alive.
I know it. It's and we don't have a functioning government that, you know, can in any way sort of, it would even contemplate registering any type of complaint or anything like that. Folks, wanted to end it on a more uplifting note, but we can't. Go out there, convince your folks, your kids, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles. Make sure they're voting if they're in a Super Tuesday state. These are the states, ladies and gentlemen: California, Texas, North Carolina, Virginia, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Colorado, Tennessee, Alabama, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Utah, Maine, Vermont. You know somebody there? Make sure they're going out to vote. And then also you can try and convince them to vote for your favored candidate. Until then, we will see you tomorrow. We got a show tomorrow afternoon. We'll probably go talk to Dave Weigel about what's happening on the ground in these Super Tuesday states, and then we'll come back later. It's going to be a late night. We're going to do rolling coverage. You know, you could watch, you know, I don't know, MSNBC, or you can allow us to tell you what's on MSNBC and when to tune in, because we're going to be watching all 3 networks. Well, 2. I don't know, watch Fox. Who cares? See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know